Have you ever looked in the mirror and felt like a stranger was staring back at you? You try so hard to sound fluent, to speak perfectly, to be enough, yet somehow your own voice feels foreign. This story isn't about grammar or vocabulary. It's about how living in Denmark, in the quiet, cold mornings of Copenhagen, taught me to listen to myself again, and to speak English with kindness, not perfection. The cold morning in Copenhagen. It was one of those mornings when the sky looked half asleep, pale, quiet, and a little sad. The streets of Copenhagen were empty, except for the sound of my own steps echoing against the cobblestones. I was holding a warm cup of coffee, trying to remember why I had moved here in the first place. Denmark was supposed to be peaceful, but that morning it felt painfully silent, like even the air was asking me, "Who are you becoming?" When you move to a new country, silence becomes louder. You hear your thoughts in a language you barely trust. You start measuring your worth by how clearly you pronounce th, or how quickly you can reply in small talk. That's what I did. I thought fluency meant belonging, but fluency without kindness feels empty. I used to watch people at the bus stop speaking Danish effortlessly, their words flowing like water. And there I was, standing still, translating everything in my head, afraid of sounding wrong. The more I tried to sound right, the smaller my voice became. That morning, as I looked at my reflection in the window, I realized something. I didn't hate my accent. I hated the person who kept apologizing for it. I had spent so long chasing perfect English that I forgot to sound like myself. Denmark has this strange way of humbling you, not through criticism but through quietness. The city doesn't shout at you to improve. It whispers, "Slow down." And maybe that's what I needed all along, to stop running after perfection and start walking beside my own voice. The cold that morning wasn't just outside. It was inside, the kind of cold that comes from years of being your own harshest teacher. But that day was the beginning of a new lesson. Because in Denmark, I would soon learn that speaking beautifully isn't about speed or grammar. It's about honesty. And honesty starts with how you talk to yourself. When silence becomes too loud, there's something strange about silence in Denmark. It doesn't feel empty, it feels alive. When I first arrived, I thought people were shy. But soon I realized they were just comfortable with silence. They didn't rush to fill every pause, and that scared me. Because when the world goes quiet, you start hearing the voice that never stops. The one inside your head. That in my apartment, the walls seemed to listen. Every night I practiced English alone, whispering phrases to myself like, "How are you today?" Or "Nice to meet you." Simple words, but they sounded heavy. I could feel my throat tighten, like my body remembered every time someone corrected me, every time I said something wrong. It's funny, isn't it? We want to sound natural, but the more we try, the more unnatural we become. I realized my biggest problem wasn't English, it was fear. Fear of sounding stupid. Fear of judgment. Fear of being too slow. One evening, I was walking near the lakes in Copenhagen, the air cold enough to make my breath visible. I stopped and listened. No cars, no voices, just the sound of the wind brushing through the trees. And for the first time I thought, maybe silence isn't here to punish me. Maybe it's trying to teach me how to listen, not just to others but to myself. Science says our brain needs space to process language. When you're silent, you're not failing, you're wiring new connections. Your brain is literally rewriting itself to make sense of the world in another tongue. I didn't know that back then. I just knew silence hurt. But slowly that hurt started to soften. I began to listen to my mistakes like whispers, not insults. And every pause between words became a bridge, not a wall that I in Denmark. Silence became my first teacher. It was uncomfortable, yes, but so is growth. And in that stillness, I started hearing the faintest sound of something new. Acceptance. My reflection wasn't me. One gray afternoon, I stood in front of the mirror in my small Danish bathroom, the kind with dim yellow light that makes everything look softer, but somehow more honest. I stared at my reflection and didn't recognize the person looking back. My mouth moved, forming English words slowly. I am learning. I am trying. I am enough. But even as I said them, a part of me didn't believe them. That's the thing about mirrors. They don't lie, but they don't flatter either. They show you every hesitation you try to hide, every small win you forget to celebrate. My reflection looked exhausted, not from studying English, but from pretending that I was fine. In that quiet moment, I noticed how my lips trembled when I tried to say certain words. I laughed nervously, realizing I had practiced pronunciation more times than I had practiced being kind to myself. I could correct my vowels, but I couldn't correct my self-doubt. The irony? I came to Denmark thinking I'd learn confidence from speaking perfect English. But what I learned instead was humility, from realizing how little I truly listened to my own voice. Psychologists say that self-image and language are deeply connected. When you speak in a foreign language, your brain temporarily borrows a new identity. You become a slightly different version of yourself. Not fake but filtered. And if you're not careful, that version can replace the real you. That's what happened to me. I wasn't just practicing English, I was performing it. I remember touching the mirror, as if it could give me back something I'd lost, my softness, maybe, or my confidence. And in that moment, something shifted. The reflection didn't change, but the way I looked at it did. I realized, it's not about sounding like a native speaker. It's about sounding like you. So I made a quiet promise to myself. From that day, every time I practiced speaking English, I would do it not to impress, but to connect, even if the first person I connected with was the one in the mirror. Because maybe the hardest part of learning a language isn't pronunciation, it's forgiveness. The Danish way of quiet confidence. If Denmark had a national sound, it would be silence, calm, confident, effortless silence. I used to think confidence was loud. The person who talks the most, fills every pause, makes everyone laugh. But the Danes taught me something very different. Confidence here isn't about volume, it's about peace. They don't rush their words. They don't compete to speak. They trust the space between sentences. First, that made me deeply uncomfortable. When I joined conversations in English, everyone spoke slowly, so slowly I thought they were being polite. But no, that's just how they are. They pause, think, sip their coffee, and continue like silence was part of the grammar. And something strange happened. The more I listened, the more relaxed my English became. My sentences stopped racing. My breathing synced with my thoughts. It felt like my words were finally mine. In psychology, there's a concept called self-paced fluency. It means your brain speaks best when your heart feels safe. When I tried to force English, my brain froze. But when I slowed down, when I stopped treating conversation like a test, everything clicked. The words came, not perfectly but naturally. One morning, at a bakery near Norrport station, I ordered coffee in English. The barista smiled, answered in Danish, then switched back to English slowly, gently. We both laughed at my accent. It was the first time I didn't feel embarrassed, because here no one cared about perfection. They cared about connection. That's the Danish way. Quiet confidence. It doesn't shout, it doesn't need validation. It just exists. It's the kind of confidence that grows when you stop trying to prove and start allowing yourself to be. Since then, I've tried to practice English the Danish way, not faster, not fancier, just calmer. Because when you slow down, your brain finally has room to breathe. And when your words match your breath, something magical happens. You start sounding like yourself. In a world obsessed with speaking better, Denmark taught me the power of speaking softer. Learning English through coffee conversations. If there's one thing Denmark truly understands, it's coffee. Not just the drink, the ritual. Every cafe feels like a tiny pocket of warmth in a country that spends most of the year wrapped in gray skies. That's where I started truly learning English. Not in classrooms, not through YouTube tutorials, but in the gentle hum of small talk over cappuccinos. At first, I was terrified. My mind would go blank the moment someone said, "So what do you do?" I'd stutter, mumble, lose my verbs somewhere between the foam and the fear. But here's the secret. Danes are patient listeners. They wait. They don't rush you. And somehow that quiet space made me brave enough to try it. I met a woman named Sophie. She worked at a little cafe near Osterbro. Every morning she'd ask me simple questions. How was your weekend? Do you like the weather today? Ordinary stuff. But those conversations were gold. They gave me rhythm, repetition, real human feedback, not correction but connection. Science backs this up. Studies from the University of Cambridge found that language learned through real social interaction is retained 40% longer than through solo practice. Our brains crave faces, voices, and emotional tone because emotion cements memory. So I started calling it my coffee English method. One conversation a day. No pressure, no dictionary, no notes, just listening, responding, laughing, and sometimes failing. And slowly my English stopped being a subject. It became a habit. One rainy day, Sophie told me, "You know, your English sounds happier now." I laughed. Not better. Happier. That's when I realized language isn't just about grammar. It's about energy. When your energy shifts, your words follow. So, if you ever feel stuck learning English, don't chase perfection. Chase connection. Find your cafe, your Sophie, your quiet rhythm. Because fluency doesn't start in your tongue, it starts in your heart. And sometimes the best English lesson you'll ever have comes served with a smile and a cup of coffee. The science of speaking slowly. Most people think speaking slowly means you're unsure or unconfident. But science in Denmark taught me the opposite. Speaking slowly is not weakness. It's precision. It's giving your brain time to breathe. And your listener time to understand. There's a fascinating study from Harvard that shows when you slow your speech by even 20%, your brain processes language more efficiently. It's like giving your thoughts a chair to sit on instead of making them sprint. That's why babies learn language so well. Everything around them happens in slow motion. They have space to notice. When I first started practicing English in Copenhagen, I used to rush. I wanted to sound fluent, so I spoke fast, too fast. My tongue tripped, my mind panicked, and I ended up speaking gibberish with confidence. It was like driving on ice. The faster I went, the less control I had. One day, I was having a conversation with a Danish colleague named Lars. He spoke English softly, deliberately, like each word mattered. He paused often, smiled, and never filled silence with noise. When he spoke, people listened. Not because he was loud, but because he was present. So I tried it. I slowed down. I focused on breathing between words. I let silence exist. And something magical happened. People leaned in. They listened more carefully. My English wasn't just clearer, it was calmer. I didn't sound like I was chasing my next sentence. I sounded like I owned it. Here's the secret no one tells you. Your nervous system affects your pronunciation. When you're anxious, your mouth tightens, your breathing shortens, and your words lose melody. But when you slow down, your body relaxes, and suddenly your voice becomes warmer, rounder, more natural. So now, every time I speak English, I imagine I'm walking along a quiet Danish street, slow, steady, grounded. No need to rush. No need to impress. Because the goal isn't to sound like someone else. The goal is to sound like yourself, clearly, kindly, completely. Fluency isn't speed. It's peace. The mirror experiment started as a joke. One morning I looked in the mirror and said, "Good morning." My voice cracked, I laughed, and for a second it felt ridiculous, like I was talking to a stranger. But that small act became something powerful. I began doing it every day. Just me, the mirror, and my slow, honest English. At first, I used it to practice pronunciation. But soon I realized it was about something deeper. It wasn't about how I sounded, it was about how I spoke to myself. Every time I made a mistake, I smiled and repeated it gently. I didn't say, "You're so bad at this," anymore. I said, "You're learning. It's okay." Psychologists call this mirror self-affirmation. When you look at yourself and speak kindly, your brain begins to rewire. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for self-control and confidence, literally lights up. Your voice stops being an enemy. It becomes an ally. I noticed something strange after 2 weeks. My tone changed. My words flowed smoother. My accent softened, not because I forced it, but because I finally relaxed. My reflection had become my conversation partner. Sometimes I'd talk about my day. Today I'm tired. Today I'm proud. Today I'm scared. Simple sentences but powerful truths. And as I spoke, I started believing my own words again. The mirror became my classroom, my friend, my therapist. It didn't correct me, it accepted me. It showed me that practicing English isn't just about training the tongue. It's about training the heart to be gentle. So, if you ever feel stuck, try it. Stand in front of the mirror. Say something honest in English. Don't perform, connect. Look into your own eyes and let your voice find you again. Because one day that reflection might surprise you, not by speaking perfectly, but by speaking bravely. What the mirror finally told me. It was a rainy evening in Copenhagen when I realized something profound. I stood in front of the mirror, as I had every morning for weeks, and spoke slowly, carefully, honestly. You are enough. You are learning. You are here. And for the first time, the words didn't feel hollow. They felt like truth. The mirror didn't say anything, of course, but somehow I heard it. It told me what love had never taught me. That kindness starts with your own voice. That patience with yourself is more important than any grammar rule. That every mistake, every stutter, every awkward sentence is not a failure, but a step closer to confidence. Science supports this too. Studies in neuroplasticity show that when we speak positively to ourselves, we strengthen neural pathways associated with self-compassion. It's like lifting weights for your brain. Slowly, consistently, you become a stronger, calmer, more resilient speaker and person. I realized that learning English had never been about speaking like a native. It was about learning to hear myself clearly, to accept myself completely. The coffee conversations, the quiet walks, the slow mornings, the mirror practice, all of it led me to this understanding. So now, when I speak English, I do it slowly, with intention and with care. Pause when I need to. I smile at my mistakes. I enjoy the rhythm of the language. And most importantly, I listen, not just to others, but to the voice that has always been inside me. If you ever feel frustrated, remember this. The mirror doesn't judge. It reflects. And sometimes the reflection teaches you more than anyone else ever could. Because the truth is simple. Kindness begins with your own words. Speak slowly. Speak clearly. Speak to yourself with love.